13 Questions by Man Transcending. Manhood in the Digital Age.
Welcome back to 13 Questions. Today we had Clint Richardson, and we have with us Mr. Bill. Well, you know, your name's Bill, and I call you Mr. So, Mr. Bill, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's always a good time to get together with you and do an interview like this. So, yeah, no complaints here.
Yeah, and actually, we came across this guest through you reading his book or coming across his book, correct?
Yeah, so I discovered Clint on a radio station like 7-8 years ago, 6 years ago maybe. I don't remember which station it was. It was on the internet. I know that. Found it on the web browser, and he wrote a book called it's called Straw Man: The Real Story of Your Artificial Person, and it's quite the volume. It's over 1,000 pages, and the print is quite small. I started reading it, didn't make it all the way through. But yeah, so that's how I first came across Clint. And shout out to Chance Garton. He actually encouraged me to reach out to Clint. And yeah, so definitely check out Chance's interview. He's been a past guest on the show before. But yeah, this one Clint and I have been trying to coordinate back and forth for a while now, and we finally nailed it down. So I'm super excited to share this with you guys.
You know what I'm super excited to get shared from you, Bill? This week's gratitude.
Yeah, let's do it.
Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude. Gratitude, 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 oh, gratitude.
So my gratitude today has to do with a past guest of the show, Jonas Ketterly. He does ceremonial grade cacao through his company Aura Cacao, and I have been recently enjoying my cacao with instant coffee in the morning. And I know that this is kind of inspired by Adam's idea. Adam had shared with me a few episodes back that he was putting his cacao chips in his coffee. And
most of my coffee will have some form of chocolate mixed into it. That is solid, good info. Mocha, baby.
Yeah, it's a real like mocha latte. I mean, I think a latte has to have milk on it.
It does, but you know.
Right. I don't put milk in mine, but yeah, I prepare the cacao like normal, and then I put it in my 16 or 20 ounce Yeti. And then, so like a normal serving of I guess a maintenance serving of cacao only takes up about like a third of that. And then I'll fill the rest of it with hot water. And then I'll add instant coffee, actually. I found this brand of organic instant coffee that I like.
Oh, very nice. I've been a Taster's Choice addict for many years myself.
I can't remember the brand name, like Hagen something maybe. I don't know. It's out of Germany, I think. But I like the instant coffee because it doesn't give me the jitters. And I know that jitters are the result of moldy coffee beans. The coffee bean is a very temperamental crop. So mold is pretty common, and a lot of people get the jitters, and they think that's because they drink too much caffeine, which, you know, not discounting that could be the case. But often than not, it's actually the mold on the beans that causes that. So with the instant coffee, because it's already coffee and it's just, what do they do, like freeze dry it or flash dry it? Like there's no...
Yeah, it's a drying process. So you're essentially getting just a flashed, frozen, as soon as it gets exposed to moisture, it rehydrates.
Yeah, exactly. So it's already brewed. There's no mold really, unless the bean had mold, but I don't, there's less of a chance of that happening, right? So yeah, I had a big cup of it before we started this interview today, and yeah, it's tasty, and gets both types of caffeine in there. You got the coffee for your nervous system, right? And then cacao has a different type of caffeine called theobromine or bromine, and that works with your cardiovascular system, so your heart system, your blood, and it also has an effect on your heart center, like your heart energy space, your heart chakra. That's a good.
I
good
can't
thing.
say that they're synergistic with each other, but I mean, they are both beans. You know, they're both sugar free. They're both kind of interacting on that same gut level. So, yeah, I mean, might be some beautiful things going on in there in your tummy, Mr. Bill.
Yeah, it helps to cut, especially with the acidity. Coffee is very acidic, so helps to cut with that. I think so. Yeah, I've been just enjoying that, and wanted to remind our listeners to go check out Jonas's interview if you haven't, and definitely check out the Aura Cacao. What did you have in mind for your gratitude on this episode?
You know, my gratitude, it's really towards that even in this crazy evolving world of processed foods and chemicals and things that we just haven't been exposed to and ingesting and absorbing and making part of our body. So there's a lot of not even just question marks, just your body getting used to processing new things and things that we don't know long-term effects for, or things mixing. But it's still beautiful to know that you can still go down to a store and get hard-boiled eggs. You can still get, chilies and vegetables and organic coffees. And we still have the ability to feed and give ourselves nutrition in a world where you got to go to a building and buy something wrapped in plastic that's made to sit on a shelf for a while, that we still have healthier options. And people should embrace that, because if you start falling into the looking only at the money or the satiation, I don't know, I get migraines from so many foods and different things that trigger it, that, the older that I've gotten, and here within the last year, I've really cracked down to, an incredibly limited diet. If it's a hot sauce, if it's got more than 4 ingredients other than sugar, or sorry, salt, vinegar, chili, and water, I'm out, type of a thing. So and it's done wonders for me. So I don't know, just being able to access very base, simple, nutritional food still is a blessing, because when I look down around the world around me, it is mind-boggling.
Yeah, and those are the ones that you kind of want to that are helpful to stock up on too, like your beans, your rice, your your staples. But yeah, definitely reading the labels is a life changer. I started doing that. It was a challenge actually that Ellie started. She challenged me to not eat anything in it with refined sugar. So, which is before we were on the organic train.
I was going to see a neurologist many years ago, and there's a really famous brand of English muffins that has natural flavors listed on it. And I wasn't even looking at natural flavors and deep into that. I mean, I wasn't even reading packages. And he was asking, well, what's your normal thing? It's like, well, I eat this. And it's like, and you got migraines? It's like, yes. He's like, okay, well, the thing is on this particular product, we've had patients that are triggered with MSG. And because you can naturally derive MSG, if you derive it in a natural form, you can still put it on a label as a natural ingredient. And it's going, wow, well, this is blowing my mind that, I have, a trigger with migraines for this as well. And then there's just in this one ingredient that's hidden, what are those natural ingredients? Yeah, I'm allergic to banana and mango and some other weird little things. And if there's a natural ingredient or a natural extract, I'd really like to know. So just from a very base standpoint of even on the natural ingredients of going, well, there's things in that realm that, that cause me, health distresses. So, but back to the original thing, still live in a world where you can buy the item that doesn't have the natural flavor and buy the item that has 5 ingredients. And I think it's becoming more popular, starting in the 50s, and industrial food things started, and it's still driving forward pretty strong. But at the same time, didn't used to be a Whole Foods. everything was natural, but we still have, even if they're corporately owned, there is still a drive, a need, and an industry for healthier options. So I have hopes that in the long end of society, that will win.
Oh yeah, I mean it has to, right? But anything with flavoring in it, like if it's because don't let the marketing fool you. Like there's natural flavors, and then there's organic flavors, and then there's artificial flavors, right? These are all terms that they use on the labels. But anything like flavor, like there's no, it doesn't tell you what it is. It just says flavor, right? It's like, so if you don't know what it is, yeah, just put it down.
Well, and train yourself. Many years ago, I went on a really reduced salt diet to the point that any bacon was way too salty for me to eat, and all store-bought tomatoes tasted salty to me. And that's just one example, but your taste buds refresh every 40 or 80 days or something like that. So, you do need to have extended periods of time adjusting to different types of food, and they will taste different. Plus you've got the gut, biome, your own nutritional needs and wants. Like, yeah, you might be craving sugar, but if you're only eating refined sugar, the minerals have been taken out. And, sugary things generally have lots of minerals. So you might have, anyways, the point is you can still get brown sugar. You can still get eggs. And I'm happy.
Eggs are good. I just had some of those before we started this interview too. So eggs are good. But flavors, yeah, I guess we could kind of make that into a segue to talk about some metaphysical properties of a stone.
I love it. I love it, Bill. What should we have today?
Well, I was planning on doing tourmaline, specifically pink tourmaline, but my prepared readings are a bit lengthy, and I think that I would like to save this for next episode, but I would like to use this opportunity to make the analogy that the metaphysical properties of these stones that we're surrounding the gratitude jar are working with as on this altar that I keep, and I mean we'll continue to do so for as long as the show is around. Each of these stones has like a flavor to it, right? They do something different on the metaphysical realm. So we've been kind of explaining what each of these, what these are during the past few intros of the past few episodes. So definitely go back and check out everything. And yeah, so this is just another benefit that I came up with that I wanted to offer the listeners in case they decided to support the show monetarily, and that could be one-time donation of any amount, like $1, or you can sign up for recurring any amount, right? So any amount for any length of period of time will get your name written in purple ink and added to the gratitude jar with everybody else's name that has supported, and this jar is surrounded by stones I keep. It's kind of like an altar, and so yeah, we're attuning to these higher frequencies, and a lot of these stones are purple and pink, which is color that deals with our top chakra, so it deals with freedom and sovereignty, which ties pretty nicely into the interview, and pretty much everything that I would like to think that a lot of what we do here talks about sovereignty and freedom. So yeah, it was just another benefit that I came up with and wanted to offer and try it out and see what happens, because this is a working, right? It's an experiment. It's just an exchange of energy, of love, and let's see if we can amplify it and maybe call in some other beneficent energies to help facilitate that, and to really kind of help facilitate really the mind-heart connection, because I have it sitting on a green cloth right now, and green is a color for heart chakra. So making this heart-mind connection, and then trying to carry that forth into our lives, our everyday life, right, is kind of a message that we try to perpetuate here on the show. So we try to help that, and so yeah, it's just another way to try to kind of help that along. So yeah, if you like what you hear, and if it vibes with you, if it resonates with you, consider sending some support. But if you can't do that, the best way and the most important way to support the show is to share it. Just simply share it, and share it with someone that you love and someone that you respect, and or somebody that you just know will find conversations like this interesting. Yeah, time, talent, and treasure. Lastly, right?
Time, talent, and treasure. The great words of Adam Curry. Well, Bill, shall we jump into the interview?
Yeah, I think that covers it for this intro. Like I said before, just be on the lookout for we'll do. I promise that we will do pink tourmaline next intro.
Check out the website. Check out all the links for the guest in the show notes. And if you have any questions, comments, write the show. Enjoy this interview with Clint Richardson. What was the best advice ever given to you? Would you modify it at all today?
When I first got really, really into this, I started doing the radio circuit because I put a documentary out there and a couple people grabbed onto it. It was my first documentary and I had no idea what I was doing, threw it out there. And a couple years later, after doing a lot of shows with Deanna Spingola, she invited me to meet with John Stadmiller, who, rest in peace, recently died. He was originally with Alex Jones as a partner. They had a falling out, mostly because Alex Jones is a scam artist, and he started his own company, his own network called Republic Broadcasting. And I was on that for, I don't know, I did something like 500 shows in 2.5 years or so, Monday through Friday, all for free. That's an unfortunate thing, is you're really giving of your own time when it comes to this stuff. And when I decided that I would go down and meet with the guy, because I wanted to make sure that he understood I'm not the kind of guy that compromises. I'm not the kind of I'm not here to sell your advertisers stuff, and that if you try to censor me, I'm going to, first people that are going to know is your audience, right? So if you start telling me I can't talk about something, well then, yeah, it's going to be a problem. And, to his credit, he said, absolutely, that's what I want to hear. And we had a couple drinks. One of the most interesting things he said, and this is to your question, the best advice I've ever gotten was him telling me at the time that right now they're fighting. I wouldn't say fighting. I should say they're spectating, watching, as Fox News was starting to take over the platform. In other words, people were switching off the alternative, as far as networks go, and starting to switch over to this new Fox News, this new persona that Fox News was portraying itself as. This was 2013. They'd already had Patriot Radio on Sirius, and they were already going for this America, hell yeah, kind of, this Trump thing, for instance, was part of it. And his warning or his advice was not to allow any part of the mainstream media, and by mainstream, of course, you're talking about corporate things that are allowed to get on TV. Right now, I cannot watch Russia TV because they've censored it, right? It used to be on TV. I can't watch certain things, certainly can't watch my stuff. I've been banned and censored to hell. So he was very clear that Fox News was taking on this model that was going to lead to exactly what we've seen today. And I was quite amazed to watch the transformation, not only to watch as Fox News became this new alternative, even stopped calling itself the media and started calling itself the alternative, or calling the rest of the media the mainstream. And he was very, 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 very concerned that people were starting to sort of follow this false prophet, this false god, if you will, and warned me and basically gave me the advice not to fall for it, and that, remember what Fox News is. And I should know, because I used to work as a sound engineer in LA, had a lot of friends that worked at Fox, wouldn't even tell people where they worked because they were so embarrassed by what Fox News was. And so basically what I've watched is that a bunch of people that I respect, or used to, have basically grabbed on to that teat and won't let go. And they all of a sudden they're supporting the presidential candidates where it used to be none of the above. There, it used to be the right-left paradigm. You wouldn't go for one side or the other because you knew they were two sides of the same coin, or two arms of the same royal family, if you will. So the whole thing has been set up. Even the advertising model of selling gold and silver and alternative products, health products, that kind of things that aren't approved by the FDA, mixed in with all the vaccine and everything else, all the stuff we should be fighting against. But no, they put all that in there too. So basically, the advice was not to fall for the mocks, the Fox News that was going to present itself as what it's presenting itself today. It's now getting the highest ratings. It's pretty much the Trump platform to promote this, again, false hero or false, narrative, even though Clinton and him are very, very closely related cousins with the same great-great-grandmother. I mean, it's just, that was the best advice, honestly. And I've told this story before. John recently died, and I was very upset to see that, but also to see that his warnings have come horrifically true. Would I modify I don't think that really applies, modifying it. I've been warning people and trying to tell people, hey, look, this is not real. This is all a staged thing. Remember when you used to have the common sense to not trust this machine that is there to deceive you and to lead you into a direction and to support something which you should not be supporting. Either candidate, either political parties in general. So it's been really interesting to watch that, and to be outside of it because someone told me about it, because someone said beware, someone gave me the advice not to fall for the trickery. It's been very enlightening to watch and see the emergence of this just completely false thing that they've created, and it's a direct copy, so
That's super interesting. I've always been a big fan of radio in general, maybe more so talk radio than sports radio or whatnot. But I didn't know that there was this big co-opting of the model. But yeah, I mean, was there ever really a time when the media was credible?
No. I mean, part of my next documentary, or was it the last one? I can't remember now. Is a whole, the famous cases where the CIA is known to have, hundreds and hundreds of CIA plants in the media, guiding the media, called Operation Mockingbird. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Yep.
So that was one of many different types of covert actions that have been leading the media. So to consider that that's not happening today is pretty ridiculous when you look at what's coming out of it. So no, it's never been something that can be trusted, because anytime it would truly be, if it was anything in this alternative movement worth its salt, which is very little, like I said, it gets censored. It gets put down in a way that I don't think most people can imagine. I don't think most people understand the censorship that's happening. You've heard about it. You've heard of shadow banning. You've heard of canceling and all that. But until you all of a sudden have, you go. I went from 500 visitors a day on my website to 25 in less than a year. You can't access my blog. My movies have been banned by YouTube, and it's been a hellish sort of curve downwards again while watching people cross over to Fox News. And then of course they're not supporting us out here who are literally, I mean, I wouldn't say wasting our lives, but spending all of our time trying to sift through all of this stuff and report it, and then you see everybody falling over. Now, the original, unfortunately, you also have this thing called gatekeepers. Gatekeepers. I've never been on a gatekeepers show. That would be your Alex Jones and your Infowars, I would put Jeff Rentz and people like that. The guy in New York, what's his name? Used to be Art Bell. Now it's
George Norrie.
George Norrie? I mean, these guys. I actually sat in with Walter Burien when he was doing an interview. They cut Walter Burien's interview off because he was talking about the golden secret of the government. So the financial reports, the audit. Everybody says there's no audit of the Fed, yet there it is. So, they cut him off, and I was there to witness it, and I was like, holy crap. And that was my first real shot at, seeing close up this type of censorship that's been going on for a long time. So no, there's no media outlet that you can trust that is, I don't want to say mainstream, because there's a real fine line there, but no, you really can't trust anything, especially when you're doing the kind of research that I've been doing for 20 years.
Well, it seems the things that get picked up by the algorithms are the things where it's harder to find the truth in. So yeah, it's not that you can pin it on one thing, but there's forcibly less distribution.
There comes a time when you realize almost, I won't say everything, but almost everything truly is a lie. And we promote the lie, and we pass the lie on, and we, add on to the lie and the mythos, and I call it the Patriot mythology, or the, whatever it is that you're trying, and it just festers like a boil. It just. And people like me come along and try to pop it, and we just doesn't. You get banned, and you get it's just very few people. I'm sorry, but very few people actually appreciate hearing the truth when it's something that goes against, gives you cognitive dissonance, or gives you, goes against your belief system, especially the religious type of belief systems like patriotism and that sort of thing, where there's nothing actually backing it. It's just you believe in history, and history says these people should be ruling you, and therefore they rule you because you believe in the history that says they do. Okay, I guarantee you that history is a lie, and I've shown how it's a lie so many different times. So everything is essentially a lie. The news is there to push the lie, even dissect it to the point where it's confusing but never clear, presents you two sides of a story, and then say, choose the truth. Well, that's not, truth doesn't have sides. Truth doesn't have, there's no alternative to the truth. The truth is the truth, period, end of story. You don't have, there's no versions of truth. So it's hard for people to, I think, come down to that when every day you see the media presenting so much crap and promoting the big lie, as I call it, the legal lie, the government lie. So anyway.
Yeah, it's just a big propaganda machine, basically, and even the word belief like has, I mean, the word lie in it. If if you kind of break it down a little bit, so there's a difference between knowing and believing, right? So it's easy to kind of trick people. It's Project Mockingbird and subliminal messaging, you name it. So
Well, the question then becomes: do people want to know? Do you want to know? Do you really want to know the truth when it has such an effect on you in so many ways, from social to I can't go to I'm not even fun at parties unless I turn it off. I gotta if I want to have friends, I gotta turn it off, and I gotta pretend that I gotta listen to them speak about what Fox News taught them to speak about, or CNN taught them to speak about. I can't. It's really hard. It's really hard to know the truth. Realize that if you tell the truth, you're going to be persecuted, just like the Bible says you will, and that you can't. It's 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 I don't know where to go from this point. There is nowhere to go, right? It's just you're gonna live it, and you're gonna stop being a hypocrite, or you're gonna do exactly what I just said, which is pretend not to know so you can fit in.
What do you choose to ignore?
Well, I was going through your questions, and number 3 and number 2 sort of have a lot to do with each other in my answer. I choose to ignore, and when I say choose, I don't mean arbitrarily. I mean all of us, really, but me specifically. If I'm to put myself in the correct light, then I have to admit, okay, I'm a hypocrite. I'm in something called simulation, right? I ignore the law of God. I ignore the law of truth. I ignore truth. Okay? I ignore the fact that people are so far down the rabbit hole that they could never come out. I ignore the fact, that the world, that every job out there is something that's going to promote that which is going to ultimately destroy us. I ignore all these things because I'm a hypocrite. And it took me a long time to really understand what that meant. To be a hypocrite means to know something and to not acknowledge it or act upon it. So I know what is right and wrong. I know what is truth and not truth, and yet I choose to live an artificial existence in an artificial person with an artificial number and an artificial pension, a social security, and an artificial this, right? I go along with all of these things, knowing they're, for all intents and purposes, evil, completely against everything the Bible teaches, which is the natural law, the law of nature. And I've chosen thus far to remain in this matrix, this system that is designed to protect hypocrisy. Now, that goes along with your third question. What book has been the most influential on your life, and why? And it took me, and I focused on these two because these two are really the most important things in my life. Have been the Bible, which is something I ignored for 90% of my life. When I sat down and actually read the Bible, I took the religion out of the picture. Everything I thought I knew about it, and I actually read it. I looked up every word in the concordances, the lexicons, dictionaries, and I actually figured out what the hell the Bible is trying to say. And what it's trying to say is that you're a hypocrite. You're living in the legal system, which is 100% opposed to the law of nature. Everything you do is against nature. Everything you do is against your fellow man because you are under a law that is not of nature or God, right? So the Bible is acknowledged by government as the foundation of common law. It's a direct copy of the English common law. So to ignore it is the ultimate foolishness. To not know the very source of most of the maxims of law that protect your natural rights, your God-given inherent rights, that comes from this book, that they acknowledge in law and have for since the inception of this country and in England. It's copyrighted by the Crown, and it's a foundation of common law. And so anybody that tells you they're under common law and is not a Bible reader has no idea what they're talking about. And so many quotes by so many prominent men and former slaves who said that a Bible reading people cannot be enslaved, because once you know the law and you know that you can say no, and you have to say no instead of acting in hypocrisy, right? So the second book is on equal par, and it's called Simulacrum and Simulation. You ever heard of that one?
No.
Well,
how old is the book?
80s. Simulacra and Simulation, which I've read about 30 times, it's about that thick, is one of 3 books that were required reading for the actors who were to then pick up the script for The Matrix. Everybody loves to refer to The Matrix. The Matrix, The Matrix. We love the symbology and we love everything, but do we really know what The Matrix is? And a lot of people claim to, but not many people have delved into the source of the movie. Now, the author of this, who's Jean Baudrillard, a French professor, had many, many interesting books. This one in particular is on postmodernism in a real way, not in postmodernism is a very strange concept. What he did in this book was to warn people about what they showed in The Matrix. Okay? The Matrix, the makers of The Matrix, were not there to warn you, but to appeal to you what this idea of hypocrisy. So simulation, it turns out, if you look in any dictionary, means hypocrisy. There's no other source of simulation than the human mind. Now, I can give you a tool. I can give you a virtual reality. Microsoft and Facebook can give you all these different tools to help you, in your simulation, in your hypocrisy, and you're going to ignore the laws of nature even further by entering into a complete and utter virtual world. All that makes you is a bigger hypocrite. It makes you, while nature and existence and health and everything decline, you might be gaining wealth within the virtual system, just like as health and everything declines right now, you're gaining wealth in the legal system, and it's all based on what? The root of all evil, which is money. All your value, everything you think you own, which you don't, you're only a tenant, you have a piece of paper, a flattering title that says you are an owner, but you're actually a tenant. Government owns everything, right? Everything. And now people see that what's so interesting about the virtual world that they're creating is that you can now see how the legal system works in the virtual world. People are buying virtual land and virtual homes. People are spending outrageous amounts of legal tender, right, which is one fiction, and transferring it into the artificial realm. They're buying digital things with digital currency. They're leaving wills. Everything is the same. The terms are the same as in the legal realm. And you're finally able to see how the legal realm, not only how it works, but that everything in it is a fiction. That everything in it has a false value, which is mammon. That we believe in that false value, which is the root of evil. Believe. We love it. Love just means belief in the Bible. Right? So the love of money, the root of all evil. The belief in money is the root of all evil. We believe that a man can be sold as a slave if the price is right. We believe that we can do anything we want to the lower species, right? To Aboriginals, to whatever it is, whatever we think is lower than us, and not equal, not pure, not beautiful, not wonderful, not part of existence, not part of God, not part of truth. We believe that if it has some fake artificial status, it's lower than us, then we can, hypocritically, we think we can sell it or, whatever it is that we're going to do, abuse it, right? So Simulacrum and Simulation, again, one of 3 books that are the basis for the movie. The author, Jean Baudrillard, actually deposed the movie because they only used his book for the ideas. They plagiarized it, but they did not give him hardly any credit. It was a prop in the movie when he opens the box and gets the money out. It's actually the book, hollowed out book, Simulacrum and Simulation, and he turns it to a chapter called On Nihilism. So if you want to get an idea of what the Matrix was really intended to be, a warning of future simulation, future hypocrisy, where the whole legal system is set up in a way that it promotes your hypocrisy, protects it, and puts you in this artificial womb or matrix, then that's the book for you to get. It will change your whole perspective. It will change your world. It'll help you understand what truly the notion of postmodernism actually is, as opposed to a lot of the other crap out there. Very, very highly respected book. So it changed my life. Again, I continue to read it. It's very hard to read. It's a translation from the French. And in order to have any dealings with this system, we have to do the same thing. We have to be hypocrites. We have to simulate. In order to do commerce, I have to be a person in the United States, pay this and do that and jump through all these hoops, which is exactly what the law of nature, the Bible, warns not to do. So it's pretty amazing. I mean, those 2 books together are just a powerhouse of understanding and, highly, highly recommended.
Well, awesome. We'll be adding that to our perpetual book list for listeners. So, What rule do you have for yourself that you never break? And why do you think that it is important?
Early on, in fact, I think it was my second documentary in 2011, was a movie called Lethal Injection, the story of vaccination. So my rule is absolutely 100%, never will I ever receive a vaccine. And that includes the taking of most pharmaceutical drugs. There are some exceptions. Some of them are legitimate. Some have been around for a long time. Most of them are not. Anything new is there because the patent ran out and they needed something. They needed to change the formula in order to repatent it. So I did a real deep dive into the very, very disgusting world of medical pharmaceutical harm. Did a recent documentary on it, which was banned, showing that doctors are actually the leading cause of death in the world, but specifically in America, because they're able to prescribe chemical concoctions made by large chemical companies that they put into little pills and call them drugs. And then the FDA, of course, describes what a drug is. Therefore, the doctor can prescribe the drug. Now, prescription is a very, very, very powerful word. It's a extremely, extremely high power and honor to have the power. It's one that the king usually reserves for himself, because it's actually a title or a land use type of term, and you're prescribing land to somebody. So the power of prescription is just about the highest power that you can have in the legal system. And so that with that comes great, great, great responsibility and care, which you do not see, obviously, in the medical industry. And so I found out that officially, their doctors are the third leading cause of death and harm. But officially, when you take everything else, you take drugs into consideration. I don't know if you've ever seen any of these drug commercials where they say may cause cancer, may cause heart attack, may cause stroke, may cause every possible illness you've ever heard of, all that coming from a drug, which is then flushed down the toilet and goes into our water system, right? So you've got this incredible, incredible corrupt industry being supported by doctors, which are an incredibly, incredibly corrupt industry. Again, hypocrites to their own oath, so-called do no harm, which none of them take. And so when I came to understand what vaccines are and where they came from, what they do, I said absolutely never in my life would I allow my body to be tainted by such filth, even though it's already happened to me in the past. And I'm sure that's where any health issues I have are coming from. And, the final documentary I'm going to make on that will go through all the health issues, all the autoimmune disease, all of the just incredible, incredible stuff that these things do, because you're not just injecting it's not just a pathogen or a dead virus or whatever. No, you're getting so many different ingredients grown on so many different cell substrates, animals, aborted fetal tissue, you name it. They're growing these things on those things. Well, of course, you can't filter that out. The warning says, or the warning label says, we cannot filter out the proteins and substrates that we grow these things on, and so we're directly injecting you with with fetal tissue that we grew this on, that we aborted, or hamsters, or guinea pigs, or fetal, bovine serum, which is blood, or whatever the hell they're growing these things on. They're injecting you with animals, insects, all these different proteins. And if you study proteins and prions are what cause mad cow disease, which are now becoming a popular thing. Yeah, you're talking about. I mean, when I looked at it, you're talking about the zombie apocalypse. if you think of zombies as not dead people, but people who've been completely screwed, and like Alzheimer's, it's acknowledged now that Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and all these different so-called dementia diseases come straight from prion disease. And the only way to get a prion disease truly is to get infected prions, which are proteins without a nucleus, injected into you. There's no way you can catch a prion disease. So, and they can lie dormant for 50 years. It's just absolutely horrible. So the effects of vaccines, the problem is you can't generally, I mean, a lot of people have immediate reactions to them, but most of the reactions you're going to have are going to be lifelong. They're going to be autoimmune disease where your body fights against its own function. The way they sterilize horses is they vaccinate against birth. In other words, they put a protein called part of the sexual organ of a pig, the ovary of a pig. They inject the pieces, as we were just talking about, the particles, the proteins, directly into the horse. And because it's a foreign zona pellucida, a foreign part of the ovary, the horse or the human or whatever, it's also patented for human fertility management, as they call it. That single foreign body, even though it's very similar to the horses or similar to the humans, you have an autoimmune response to where now the horse it'll develop antibodies against its own sexual reproduction. And they have a 90% success rate in the wild. sterilizing horses. How? By vaccinating them, inoculating them with exactly what they do, what's in every vaccine, which are these proteins. So why are people having all these issues? Why do you have Gulf War syndrome? Because you're injecting, again, aborted fetal tissue that's been cloned, in other words, cancered in a petri dish for many years. You got all these cell substrates that you're getting injected into you. Of course, you're gonna have a reaction. Of course, you're gonna have this autoimmune. Of course, you're gonna have all these cancers and all these things. Monkey kidney virus, monkey this, AIDS, all these things. You know, I don't know what to tell people, but if you're foolish enough, and if doctors are foolish enough to give vaccines without knowing anything about them, right, which most don't, I just don't know. I don't know what's wrong with people at this point, where you're actually taking something like this. I mean, read the damn ingredients. Read something, you know. And then you've got this whole other area, which is pet vaccines. You know, why at the end of your life, or hell, when he's young, is your pet growing tumors? Well, read the vaccine insert. It says that's going to happen. It warns against it, right? We're injecting these poor animals with the worst kind of unregulated stuff that's far worse than the stuff we get as humans. So, absolutely, 100%. What is the rule that I'll never break? I will kill anybody who tries to put that in me, or I will defend anybody who you know. No, you will not put an inoculation of any kind. To inoculate actually has a meaning, and the meaning is very scary. If I'm someone who is a butter of trees, a butter of plants. So in other words, I want to inoculate a tree. I have an orange tree that I also want to inoculate so that it grows apples or a different kind of orange. I'm actually, to inoculate means to cause a new growth of something new. That's what it means in that field. And it's the same thing in the human body. You're inoculating cow blood and, you know, anything. If you eat cow blood, it's food. It's nourishment. If you inject it directly into your body, it continues to act like blood. Right? And that's what's causing all these health issues. Why everybody looks so unhealthy. Why everybody's obese. Why everybody's... I mean, it's just... I can't stress enough, stay away from both pharmaceuticals and especially vaccines. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I think I like your answer. I especially like it because of the use of the word never. Like, we had a guest a while back who was very strongly advocating never use the words never and always, just because they're absolutes and it doesn't leave room for like wiggle room. But when it comes to this type of stuff, and this is me personally, right? Like, I would agree. And it's it's kind of really sick that they're going after the pets. But what's even more, like, I don't know, I find disgusting is that they're approving these for, the 5-year-olds or whatever, right? So yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Well, it's also with every institution that's been developed, whether it be medical or pharmaceutical or scientific science, there's a huge difference between scientific method, and what is called scientism, which is this religious cult that has taken over the institutions of science. It doesn't matter. Science is a process, right? It's not an institution. When Anthony Fauci answers a question by saying, if you argue with me, you argue with science, there's a problem, right? When people when as the research I've done, when 75% of all scientific studies cannot be reproduced, reproduction being one of the number one things that says, okay, this is a legitimate scientific experiment using a scientific method. If 75% and over of scientific studies cannot be reproduced, we know there's a problem. There's something else going on here. This is not just science. This is, I mean, again, if you really you want my opinion, this is a bunch of people who want to recreate life in their own image. And they have infiltrated in to the high places of government and into these institutions that are set up to protect them. And look, I mean, you want to know what caused COVID? I made a documentary. It's called Wagging the Dog. I made 2 of them. I'm about to release the full second version, but the part of the second version is out there. The first version explains science and explains, because I was actually able to find the panel discussions where all these scientists, so-called, get together and talk about the risk-benefit analysis of doing gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function meaning I'm going to add some horrible thing to this virus. I'm going to take in a lab, and I'm going to make this virus or pathogen more virulent, or we're going to make it more contagious. We're going to make it airborne. They call them the 7 deadly sins. And that's what gain of function is. This is why that word got popular. And so I got all these panel discussions, hours and hours, days worth of panel discussions, and tried to cut them up as much as I could, just so there's a record of these people actually admitting and talking about what they've done. There's no question about what happened. The question is, why is that not being reported? The question is, why, if you've got, of course it's to protect people like Fauci and all these people who are doing it. Fauci's number one project for years, decades, has been to take H1N1, already highly contagious H5N1, which would kill about 60% of the people it infects, and make it even worse. That's his specific baby, right, that he's done. This is what they do. This is scientism. This is not science. This is, what happens if I put a Lincoln log together with a Lego? Well, what's going to happen? Let's find out. There's not any foresight to it, right? And then they come out in this last one, they say, look, America, the United States government, has committed treason against all of us in a way that I can't even put into words. The only thing I can tell you is that China, who keeps their people's personal data secret, filed a petition, not a petition, but a notice, sort of a world notice into the World Health Organization or whatever, that their intent years ago was to create biological weapons that were race-based. In other words, genetically based. Okay, they filed that. Meanwhile, America and other countries are selling all of our DNA to the open market. Okay? If you've ever done any kind of blood draw, anytime you've given your blood, anytime you've voluntarily sent, I'll give you a good example. People, stop doing this. Please stop giving away what is the ultimate personal information, which is your DNA. You're sticking yourself, you're sending it in the mail to find out your fake ancestry. I can't tell you what your ancestry is. I'm not going to fulfill your dreams of being white or black or somewhere in between and from some region. It's all bullshit. But what they are doing is they're getting your DNA and they're selling it on the open market. And part of that open market are countries that have officially stated that they're creating biological weapons, gain-of-function research, in order to cause whatever it is that's going to infect you, whatever pathogen, whether it's a virus or whatever else, specifically to attack traits that are genetically predisposed, right? Sickle cell anemia. Okay, it's okay to say this happens to a lot of black people, but not a lot of white people. Over here, you have diseases that affect Jews only. Over here, you have diseases that affect Chinese people only. That's okay. It's not racist to talk about this. We have to. That's medical. That's very important. Scientific to talk about that. These people are. While we're shutting up and not acknowledging all these different beautiful races, here's a country that has openly admitted to, buying the information that U.S. is selling them on its own people to destroy them. That's the situation we're in. Now, I put out that documentary, bam, got one hit, YouTube pulled it down. It's called Wagging the Dog. All my stuff is on BitChute and Odysee. Odyssee's my main channel. It's called Red Pill Sunday School. If you want to watch the movie, great. I don't know what to tell people, but this is, when I talk about what is the truth, and you can actually go into the panel discussions that are happening behind closed doors, listen to all the scientists who are actually doing the work and doing the gain of function work. It's not China, it's us now, and we put it out there. We pay for it to be done in other countries, as in Wuhan, right? When I talk about the truth, and you hear it directly from the mouths who've been doing the actual research, including Fauci, who delivers the opening address, that's the kind of truth I'm talking about. That kind of stuff you're not going to find in the media. It's going to stay hidden unless folks start sharing it and demanding that, this change, because right now there is an open market for your DNA, and most people are dumb enough to voluntarily give it away in the hopes of getting, I don't know, there's DNA, there's the colon guard. They're all selling your DNA to the worst possible people. That I just don't know what to say. It's just we're in crazy land right now, right? But people like me, everybody's listening to Fox News. That's all I can tell you.
If I were to ask your best friend, what is the one thing they would say you need to work on the most, and why?
My personal well-being, health, and spiritual well-being. I kind of ignore myself, put myself into my work, and put it out there. Never really take care of myself. Probably need to lose about 70 pounds at this point. Going prematurely gray. One of those things that I sometimes forget that I need to take care of myself and my own health, and it's starting to show a lot more than I'd like, and that's been apparent to friends that have known me a long time, including my parents. So they're concerned about me.
Have you heard of a medical device by the name of AquaCure? Hydrogen generator. I haven't talked about it on the show before.
No, but I mean, essentially, you're talking about Brown's gas.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to meet up with a guy named Dr. A. Truott, who was originally. Speaking of that, he speaking of religion, he was a big radio show host, and he was down in Cedar City and was completely Mormon backed, and he was healing people on the side of healing people of cancers and AIDS and all these different things with the cannula of Brown's gas, and he actually had a water torch, which back then, again, very, very secretive. No one knew about him. He showed it to me. He burned a hole in a quarter for me, and then put the quarter in my hand, and it was ice cold and wet. Right, so the machine was you can burn water. Like I wore that quarter around my neck to remind me that, again, the big lie, the energy crisis, one big huge lie. What they're doing right now is they're taking the hydrogen in order to control it as a fuel, because you could take water and you can burn it. You extract the hydrogen, you burn it, and the only exhaust is water, right? He changed over his boat engine. He could get 1,000 miles with a tank full of water, and then reuse the water. It was amazing. I mean, he showed me this, and so I just wore that quarter around my neck till I lost it, because it reminds me that the energy crisis will get one big freaking lie. But he used to use that same Brown's gas in a cannula, and then he would flood you with a sort of energy pulse, and from an old they used to make these machines that were energy machines way back. They made them in the Ford factory, actually.
Tesla, like a Tesla.
Way back in the early 1900s, all the doctors' offices had these things. They had different glass tubes with noble gases in them, and you would, they had different attachments. They would stick them up your butt, they'd stick them up your nose, stick them in your ear, depending on what. And they were curing people. Factory got burned down. It just disappeared. I mean, absolutely 100% disappeared. And he found the old documents that showed how to make it and what the patent was and everything else. So he reproduced it. It's you can check out his stuff, Atruot. I think his thing is Mother Earth Minerals, meminerals.com or whatever. But he was one of the original people. Pilsner and all those guys, they were all working together. They were working together to change over the LA system to the transit system to water engines. Next thing you know, everybody's dead.
Yep, that's how it usually goes.
Shot in the head, right? So yeah, it's a fascinating thing, and it does work. However, I'm not sure it'll work alone. He makes minerals that are angstrom size and sublingual. So he's giving you those so that you have the minerals to so that your body can actually fix itself. Most of us are missing those. Magnesium not in the soil anymore. And then he floods you with the energy, and he floods you with the Brown's gas. He was curing things. And basically what happened was the Mormon church, who owns a lot of hospitals. Most hospitals are, university or church. They said, look, we hear you're curing uncurable cancers and shit over here. You're gonna have to stop that. He's like, what do you mean I gotta stop? No, what do you mean? It's like we hospitals are one of our biggest breadwinners, right? We're a for-profit, corporation here, and apparently that's what made him quit the church. Was their insistence that he cease and desist in actually healing people outside of their hospital system, because he was taking away their business. And when he refused, they completely wiped him out. The one night he talks about where he was going to be on the radio, they turned off the power to the whole building, and from that point on, he's been sort of a lone advocate against the Mormons, and pretty interesting story. But if you want to check out his stuff, highly recommend. It's the only time I've ever actually taken a vitamin or a mineral, because they're separate. Like, it's water and say calcium, and you take that, you put it under your tongue, and you let it go into your blood system. It's the only time I've actually felt like almost a high from taking any kind of vitamin, because it actually goes in and starts, it's what you need. And so you do the calcium, you let it absorb, and then you swallow it, and then you do the whatever, and then you do the magnesium, and then you do this, and you don't mix the zinc, and you don't do there's a whole process to it. But it's the only time I've ever heard of anybody actually doing what you're talking about, and curing, like I said, incurable diseases. The only other example would be the institute down in Texas that they made a documentary about. I can't remember. Brzezinski? Did you ever hear about Brzezinski?
I'm not familiar now.
That would be a really good interview for you if you can get the guy who made the documentary. He was a guy from Russia, and he came over here, and again, curing incurable cancers. The government tried to steal his patents, and put him in jail, but they couldn't find any of his customers that would testify against him because he cured their cancer or their cancer. So the documentary is called Brzezinski. Highly, highly recommended. And basically all he did was he discovered that people who have cancer are lacking something in their piss, in their pee, their urine, something called anti-neoplastoids. And if he could extract those anti-neoplastoids from people who don't have cancer and give it to these people who do, it would destroy the cancer. They're missing something in their body. Well, it turns out that's what they happen to be missing for these certain cancers. And like I said, they just tried to shut him down because he's curing things without permission from government, without allowing government to have its share and have the patent and everything. So, but to witness, what really got me about that was to witness the incredible effort that the government went through to put him on trial, try to put him in jail for nothing, and to see them at the same time try to introduce their own patents that would take over those patents when he lost them. I was shocked. I just couldn't. This guy, he documented it such a good documentary. So if you get a chance to see that, Brzezinski, check out H. Roth's stuff. You'll the thing about Odd is that he's the guy that's been doing it. Everybody else is plagiarizing, is stealing the idea, and you got to be wary of anybody who would do that.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
I've been fortunate enough to do this, which I always say that if you don't know a subject until you can teach it, and I think what really turns me on is that aha moment that I get in people when I can teach them something or take away that cloud of confusion that's put there on purpose to distract and make people not go further. And because I take such a deep dive into things and I won't stop until I get to the bottom of it, I love teaching. And if I can't teach something, I don't know it. That's my rule. If I come up against something that I don't know the answer to, I write that down and I find the answer, because I don't want to be stuck in a situation where I don't know something about something I'm claiming to know. And also sometimes that thing I don't know will push me in a different direction. It'll tell me I'm wrong, which is equally as stimulating for me because it makes me want to be right. It makes me want to not be right, but to find the truth. And the thing about truth, again, is it's not that it's kind of anticlimactic. You're sitting here wondering about all these. I remember, 15, 20 years ago, sitting here wondering about all these things that I've since discovered and written about, and I don't remember. I don't remember. I do remember what it felt like to want to know something, but then to look at all this, this research. It's like one of those boards you see in the movies where they're connecting strings across the room. And, if I can teach something and make it simple and people can have that aha moment, if I can bring people who, like myself, grew up in hypocrisy, I grew up in the Methodist Church, absolutely 100%. If I can turn people, and I've turned so many people to the Bible, that they read it for what it is, not for what people tell you it is, not for what you believe it is, not even for what you want it to be, but with a completely open and neutral mind. And the amount of feedback I've gotten from people that have said, thank you so much for just steering me back towards the Bible and understanding, oh yeah, right, it is a book of law. It is not a religion in any. Religions are built around sacred objects. Well, this is the sacred object what is it? That's for you to discover, because all these religions and all these different things, all the things that you've been taught about it are there to deceive you and keep you away from it. And if you think about it, if you were a lawmaker and you wanted people to follow a law that would benefit you and make you profit and force all the people to use your money and force all the people to be in your little matrix, wouldn't you want them to ignore the very foundation of your system, which is what protects you? The thing that says, "Do not contract with the devil," which is an attorney. Do not put yourself into this system. Wouldn't you want all the very thing that so many famous people have said, including founding fathers, as they call them, that the Bible will set you free, or that a Bible reading people can't be enslaved? Wouldn't you want people to hate such a book? See, this is just one of many, many conditionings that we've gone through, brainwashings in ultimate ways. And so when people tell me, yeah, I read the Bible 20 times and I never got what you've been teaching. I never understood that I had to look deeper and look at what each word actually means, that the word God can mean man or magistrate or king or anything, that you have to look deeper and you have to understand that Christ is actually the law of God personified, that all these different things, it's all metaphor, right? That you can't take anything literally or you're going to miss the message. People have just been so spiritually lifted and understanding of what the legal law is, which is directly opposed to it. It tells you that you must do everything the Bible tells you you must not do, right? Thou shalt not, and the legal system says thou shalt. You must. That is the to teach and see the light bulb come on is probably the most spiritually, uplifting thing that can happen. In my instance, anyway, it sort of justifies all the sacrifices I've made to do this.
What was the most embarrassing or humbling experience of your life?
I would probably have to say 9/11. I don't know if that's a common answer or not, but for me, it was kind of a special occasion because I watched it from my roof in Manhattan, and experienced the whole city being shut down. The cell phone towers were, of course, down. We went to the store, fortunately, in time to actually buy what remaining food and water we could before it was all gone by the time we left the store. We had cash, and since the towers were down, no stores were accepting credit cards at the time. We wouldn't have had cash, we would have had nothing. And suddenly there was nothing being delivered to all these stores and all these things. And for the first time in my life, I got to experience what we in America can only imagine. Is happening. United States has attacked openly 50 different countries since World War II. World War II was the last declared war. There's been no war since World War II. Even Vietnam there was so much behind that, but it wasn't a war. There was no declaration of war. It was an emergency operation run by the CIA. It was even my dad got a medal which showed that he was part of the hiring process where they took all these soldiers and basically subletted them to the CIA without even really understanding. So there has been no war since Iraq. These aren't wars; these are conquests, right? I got to experience at least somewhat what whether it was a false flag, whether we did it to ourselves or not. I got to experience that most humbling, frightening experience, which is that if we run out of food, we're gonna have to walk out of our city, right? We couldn't drive. My street was closed off from 14th Street, and I just happened to be on 11th Street. Right across my door was the new school, which was the missing persons center. That was hell. Down the street on 11th Street was St. Vincent's Hospital, I believe it was called, and that's where everybody was lined up to give blood. I mean, I was right in the thick of the operations part of it. Fortunately, it was downtown, and I was in more midtown, but near the village. But man, I mean, that was the most. We joked because someone in Iowa, for instance, was taking 2 weeks off of work because they were so, emotionally distressed. Whereas in New York, we're actually there. We actually had to cope with it, and it was like we recovered faster than the rest of America. It was really strange. And that's how New York is. People actually come together there, as opposed to a lot of the rest of the cities and stuff out there. So I'm so grateful that I was actually there to witness it myself, to see what was happening, to be amongst this strange and terrifying, having soldiers, armed guards, armed soldiers lining the subways, and just experiencing martial law as opposed to just military rule, which we're under all the time, but actually seeing the martial law put in place, living in it, having to give 3 forms of ID, and a bill to even get on my street because it was all closed off. That was something, man. I was watching it, of course, watching the towers fall, a couple miles away from my rooftop was also pretty hellish. But I mean, seriously, that was the. I mean, when you're talking about something that truly humbles you, that kicked me out. I mean, the night before, to be perfectly honest with you, the night before that, I mean, it was like a metamorphosis for me. The night before that, I was out dancing till, I don't know, 3 a.m, taking drugs, right? Because that's what we were doing. That was the lifestyle I was living in my 30s. I was working for the airlines. I was traveling all over the place, having the time of my life. And that was the one event that humiliated me, that stopped me from going further down that path. And yeah, I mean, truly a humbling experience to actually be there and actually witness. And it certainly led me down this path. Got me to join groups like We Are Change in Los Angeles, and got me to move out of New York. It got me to get into sound engineering, got me to quit because Hollywood is probably the worst place on earth, and got me into doing my own thing. So without that one event, I don't know where my life would have led. I certainly wouldn't be here talking to you.
Well, it's nice to know, in a sense, that history, as terrible as events can be, can still push people in the right direction. That even if you think there is some sort of totalitarianism or system that is oppressive, that system itself is still breeding freedom. What is your greatest fear? How do you overcome it?
That's something more of a personal question, and I'd have to say that my greatest fear since I was young, I've always been. I think a lot of people who gravitate towards this type of movement or this type of interaction are people who don't fit in, or find it difficult to fit into places. A lot of musicians, a lot of people who are musically oriented, a lot of people who are, just thinkers. So my fear from a young age, because I always felt different, was that I would never find a group that I would fit in with. That I'm never going to fit in anywhere, right? That I'm so different and so, like, I cannot call normal what most people are willing to accept as normal. I cannot. What's the quote? It is no measure of health, to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. I am not well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, as most people seem to be. And I think a lot of people have that same feeling. And so my greatest fear is that I would never find a group of people that I could fit in with. I mean, I always had my best friend and girlfriend right, but to actually have this group of people, and then I realized, well, if I did fit in, what would that mean? If I can't find anybody that I fit in with, that would mean I'd have to compromise. That would mean I'd have to, I don't know, I'd have to sell myself short. I'd have to allow myself, I'd have to lower my moral standards, again, that hypocrisy that we're talking about, in order to fit in. I'd have to accept certain things as normal, or at least pretend to. And ultimately, I figured out that if I'm going to have friends that are more than just superficial, I'm going to have to turn all this off, and that's what I've done. I've been able to now essentially turn the teacher off and not try to force my my opinion or the truth on people. I simply, I I try to offer some wisdom when I can, but I mean, like I said, I if I fit in somewhere, it means that I'm compromising. I'm not being myself. I'm not. I'm just not doing something right. And I've learned that I'm never going to fit in. But I did find this wonderful group of people who are at least willing and searching for answers. And a lot of those answers I can provide. Are we friends? Are we going to go eat a beer after this? No. I consider everybody I've ever talked to or whatever to be a friend, and they can call me up anytime. We can do this all day and night because I love to teach. It's what spiritually drives me, because I love to learn, right? So that is probably it's still a fear as far as a social construct. But I also know. See, I have this kind of faith, this belief, if you will, that all of us who feel this way, who don't feel like we can functionally exist in a profoundly sick society and normalize it, those of us who are waiting, I feel like we're going to get together. I feel like eventually we are going to develop some, whether it's a monastery, a community, whatever the hell we're calling it, as long as you're staying away from communitarianism and all this stuff that's trying to be forced on us, some form of place that we can fit in together, not to compromise, but to stop being hypocrites, to stop the normalization of bad things, so that we can support each other. Even though we might be completely different people, we have the same foundational, understanding and truth guiding us. We understand the law of nature and how it opposes all the things that we do on a daily basis. And we want to get together, and we want to fit in a way that is not just a social fulfillment, but a spiritual fulfillment. Not just not just my my friends down the street that I have dinner with, or the occasional. No, people who I rely on for my life, people who I rely on for support, for people that I can give freely to, and they will never ever even think about offering me money or anything else. But then when I'm in need, they will provide for me. That is what has replaced the concept of fitting in, or the cliques and the groups and the typical things you see in movies, the jocks and all this shit from high school. That has now replaced. That is my goal. That is my new purpose in life, is to find all of the misfits. And they're misfitted because they will not accept mediocrity. They will not accept immorality. They will not accept that as what is normal and play along with it, like I have to do with other people to just to have some semblance of human interaction. Now, maybe that sounds snobby, maybe that sounds stuck up, maybe that sounds whatever. It's not at all. It's exactly what the Bible teaches, that you must separate yourselves, that you cannot live in a morally reprehensible situation and try to practice morals. You cannot have two laws. You cannot not have two masters. You can have two gods. You must separate yourself. And so the idea of trying to fit into a morally reprehensible thing has left. I could give a shit about that. All I care about is helping other people find their, if you will, community that they can then support each other, and they can then, and hope that I can somehow fit into that.
What is your single greatest driving force in life, and how do you further it?
I kind of learned, I won't say learned, I kind of intuited recently. And when people would ask, what's the meaning of this? What's the purpose? What's the meaning of life? Why are we here? What drives you? And because I've delved into, because I've looked at all these different things, because I've seen what the powers that be are doing to us, because I see how we're being altered spiritually, emotionally, genetically, physically, into something that I don't think most of us really want to be. Something patentable, something that is property, something that is artificial. Now my greatest force, what drives me, it's funny because technically it's illegal, and yet it's morally correct, right? It's under the spiritual law. It is absolutely 100% the most necessary thing that we can be doing, and yet over here in the legal realm, it's unprotected behavior. It's illegal. It's you go to jail. And that is to protect life itself. The meaning of life, guys, is real simple. What is the meaning? What is the purpose of life? Well, if you think about it just reasonably for a minute, the answer is a question. That's life itself, right? Procreation. Creation wasn't an event. Creation is an ongoing thing. It's not a point in history. That's ridiculous. It wasn't a Big Bang. Don't think of it that way. Creation doesn't start or end, and neither does quote unquote God, if you will, the universe. Right? So what is the purpose? What is the meaning of life? Well, it's to keep life pure. What drives me is to keep life pure, to keep life in existence, which is ironically the meaning of the word Jehovah, which is self-existence, self-evidence, life itself, existence, the universe, right? What should be driving us is not drugs and anything we can do to get by and accept again this completely morally reprehensible system that we live in, this legal system, the simulation, the hypocrisy. We should be striving to keep our bodies pure. We should be striving to that end. We should be striving to keep generation after generation after generation after us pure, because it is our duty to existence, to God, to creation, to life itself, to continue life. That there's not much more you need to understand, right? If I'm if I'm some creature in the wilderness, I don't contemplate the meaning of life. I get it on. And I have my family, and I protect my family, and I do everything I can to keep it safe and secure and to ensure that my family, well, what are we doing? Right? I mean, what the hell are we doing? We're not doing that. We're doing everything we can to ensure our own self-destruction. What the hell is going on? Right? So when life itself, when the purity of everything in nature becomes your purpose, when husbandry to the land, not marriage to another person, but husbandry, the marriage to the land itself. Husbandry is a wonderful thing. So many great works on the subject. When that becomes your, I don't know how to say it, when that becomes your goal, when that becomes your existence, your reason for existence is existence itself, right? And to keep that existence as pure as possible to maintain spiritual and physical happiness. I mean, that's the end. There's nowhere to go from there. The only place you can go from there is back into the matrix, back into a position where you are effectively trying to escape, again, to act in simulation and hypocrisy from what is your natural duty to, quote unquote, God. The problem is we're presented with so much fiction and entertainment and technology. Technology just means art. Back in 1828, technology had no meaning. It just meant art. So all of this that entertains what we're doing now, this is just art. And while we're in here, corporations and governments and people who work for those governments are destroying and absolutely polluting, right? And so when I say what I want, what I desire, what gives me a driving force, honestly, is to end personhood. My driving force is to end corporate personhood, to end limited liability, to end the respect as the Bible instructs to stop respecting persons, to stop respecting the notion that a corporation is a person and that the people that are in the corporation have no responsibility for what that person does. That corporation, the idea that we are sitting back. Oh, we talk, but we don't do anything. We don't actually act. We don't say, hey, you are killing the land. You are destroying utterly the water supply. You are, I mean, there's things out there that are going on that I cannot believe that a sensible, sane people, a right-minded people would allow to happen. And that's why, I'm not sure there are right-minded people, but if there are, I'm sure looking for them, because who's going to stand up? Who's going to snap out of the delusion that a corporation, and keep in mind all governments are corporations, that a corporation is allowed to not only harm people, places, and things, but to then set up a system of law that protects that behavior, ensures the damage, ensures, right? So it's as if there's nothing actually happening. It's just as long as, oh, well, yeah, you can, how about carbon tax, for an example? Just pay a tax and you can pollute all you want, as long as you match the pollution in a monetary value, right? So I tell you that I want persons to die. I want the notion of personhood in general to be taken out, just as the Bible instructs, that we stop respecting the notion that a corporation has the same rights as any individual, basically, because that is what is causing all the problems. The fact that I cannot defend the land against Monsanto, the fact that I cannot do anything to stop a person from first buying the land and then destroying that land, from scientifically altering life itself in their own image, that is the biggest crime against nature. That is the biggest crime against purity and life itself that I can think of. And because we're not doing anything about it, we're going to die and be altered and get more sick and become more reliant on technology and art, because as nature dies, the only thing that's going to be able to keep us alive is the artificial. So you're at a crosspoint. You're in a spiritual war. You either fight that war with quote-unquote God or Jehovah or whatever word you want to use, nature as your law, the highest law considered by all governments, or you sit back and you let it happen, and you say, well, that's okay. They have license. They're lawless. They have a license to destroy, license to kill, license. There is permission from government, from a person, a corporation, to destroy and kill and maim and pollute. So I guess you could say, my driving force is to wake people the hell up by doing this, by speaking, by teaching, by saying, look, everything is completely screwed up, and most of that comes right here, from your perception of things, not from reality, but from your perception, that you have no power over this fictional thing called Monsanto or called Microsoft or called this. It's so ridiculous when you think about it, that a corporation can act and have the power of a king, the protectionism of a king, and you can't do anything about it. And you're doing something is very wrong, obviously, that is the case. So, that essentially means that the legal law as the Matrix, in other words, has gotten so powerful that it has completely dominated the law of nature and taken us out of our existence in nature. So obviously there's a problem. We're not going to last much longer. We're not going to be recognizable if these people have their way. And that is, you'd have to go into technocracy and into transhumanism and all that shit before you really start seeing what they're planning to do. And that's what science has been turned into. All these crazy science things that are happening, they're to promote the transition of humanity. As crazy as that sounds, the transition of humanity into transhumanism, into mixing computer technology and the flesh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we are.
we're all-
Sorry.
I
Bill.
was just going to say we're all going to become Borg, it seems like,
Yeah,
assimilated.
well, this is a form of forced evolution we've never seen.
I looked up the word Borg. You know what it means?
I just thought
It's just short for bourgeoisie.
Oh, really? Wow.
It just means you and me. It's bourgeoisie. It's like common people. Borg are the common people. That Star Trek was a Rand Corporation idea. Star Trek is not a good thing. Star Trek is to promote all the bullshit that they're doing to us. So the Borg is just the common people. Common people must be destroyed, right? Or altered.
Interesting.
Enslaved. Yeah.
Who were or are your role models and why?
I had to write down the answer for this one. I don't have any. Wasn't it Gandhi, I think, that said be what you
be the change you want to be? Something like that?
Yeah, exactly, right. So who could possibly be my role model, right? Now keep in mind, I came from New York and I came from Hollywood, right? 7, 8 years in Hollywood, going through the hell that it takes to become successful in Hollywood. As a sound engineer, which is a very small group of people, I don't play roles. Again, my goal is truth. I don't have a role model. I don't want to be, when I do music, for instance, I don't want to be in a genre. I don't want to be a contracted band in a record company and end up, I want people to hear my music. Do I want people to buy my music or do I want people to hear my music? The answer, I want people to hear my music. I don't want to be like a singer or a guitar player. I want to be me. I want to be unique. I want to offer something that no one else has, right? So I have 2 role models, and this is going to sound real cheesy to people, but I grew up in this Methodist church, right? And I watched these people, and I never really understood about doctrines and things. Church to me was a place where people got together in fellowship and helped people and did things that were charitable. That's what I thought church was for a long time. Then I find out there's this doctrine from this corporation called the United Methodist Church, which I'm like, and they have conferences and all this, corporate nonsense. And I'm like, wait a minute. And then you find out all churches, that's why they incorporate. By the way, to incorporate means to remove the spirit from something, which is interesting. So I watched over the years as my mom, she didn't work. My dad worked for the state and had a pension from the military, and so she was able to not work. And she spent her life doing charity. Usually through the church, but through all kinds of other things too. She was more busy than someone who worked and got paid for what they were doing. The difference was she loved what she was doing. She felt good all the time. She couldn't be bothered by the shit that she saw on television. She wouldn't watch most television because she wanted to focus on being charitable. She wanted to be someone who helped other people, and that is what I want to be. So you're going to ask me who's my role model? I got to be honest with you. My mom is probably the saintliest person that I've ever come across. I took after her. I want to help people. I want to, bridge. I want to bring people together. I want to do that. And so I quit my jobs. I haven't, I'm not in the tax system. I do this solely. I don't know how long I can do it anymore, but, I, what is a role model? Well, if I'm playing a role, then aren't I just acting? Aren't I just an employee? Aren't I really saying an actor? Right? When government refers to its placed people, right? When it refers to the people that work on behalf of government or on behalf of some thing, some activist or whatever, you know what they call them? They call them actors. They call them good actors. You've probably heard the word bad actor in the news. Why are they calling professional people actors? If a politician is an actor, if a judge is if all these things are actors, well, what's the difference? They're models. They're not real. They're there to promote something that's not right. So I can't think of it. The only other role model, and I tell people this all the time because I am an openly admitted hypocrite. I'm trying to tell people that I'm not your role model, that Christ is actually your model. Christ is actually the example you're supposed to follow, because Christ is a character who is constantly challenged, who's constantly begging God, his Father, as we are all sons of God, right? Nothing special there. He's constantly saying, I'm so tempted. I want to, do this, but I know the right path. And he always follows the right path. Why? Because he's always making a moral choice. Once you're incorporated into a system, and that's what emancipation means, to incorporate a man into a city or corporation. So all the slaves were enslaved in Washington, D.C., as we are through the birth certificate. We don't make choices. We're in the legal system. The choices are already made. It's called a choice between two evils. Whether I vote for president or not, I'm still going to get the same asshole as the president. Right? Why do I have a representative? Where does it say that I need a representative? What are you representing me for? I don't understand. Why do I have to vote for this? Why do I have to agree to? And it turns out you're not. The public vote isn't counted. The public vote, the only reason for the public vote is to give consent to the Electoral College, who actually does the electing. Oh, I did a documentary on that. So the Electoral College, the elector is a word that means upper class. Voter is a word that means lower class. Someone who prays to the elector. Voting means to pray. We're asking them to give us this asshole as our leader instead of this asshole. I mean, so, and whether we get it or not depends on the electors, because they're the ones that make the choice. All right, so totally getting carried away here, but I don't have any role models. I might have used to. I might have used to have some gleaming respect for, say, David Gilmour, my favorite guitarist. But I don't want to be like, I don't want to do, I want to make my own stuff, right? I want to do my own thing. I don't have a role model. The only role model that would show, and I wouldn't call it a role model, I'd call it my hero, my who do I want to be like? And those are the only two figures I can think of. Christ being an allegorical character that I must make the decision to make a moral choice at all times. And then my mother, who, to the best of her ability, makes moral choices at all times. Who else do I want to be like? I don't want to be any flattering title. I don't want to be president. I don't want to be an employee to be used. I don't want to be anything. I don't want to be have a role in the legal. I want to be a son of God. I want to be in nature. I want to follow nature's law. I want to be married to the land, and I want no frickin' fake ass title that says I am something that I'm not. Why? Because the Bible says, "Do not pretend to be something you are not." Don't respect flattering titles. Don't respect persons. Don't allow what we've allowed to happen to happen. It's a spiritual war. The problem is, in the legal realm, you have no ability to make moral choice. You're in causality, right? Every choice that you make is predetermined. The best slave is one who can choose how he is employed. So no, I don't have any role models.
What quality do you most admire in a woman?
That is such a loaded question. Tits and ass. I would probably, because woman, first of all, is a non sequitur. It's a non starter. Woman is a legal term. We're all men. You might be a male or a female, but we're all men. If women, as we call them, would stop trying to put on a flattering title, a legal title of woman, and say, okay, I'm a man, I'm just female, right? Then none of this equal rights shit would be there. We're all born equal. And that means we're born equal under God in nature. We're born without status. We're born without title. The only way you can become unequal is to start adding titles, start adding descriptions, start adding signs and symbols, legal things, right? We're born without such nonsense, but you have to insist that you are a woman and you get women's rights. Wait a minute. What happened to equal rights? If you have women's rights, that means you have rights that I don't have. Wait, what happened to the we're all equal? Well, if you go to Title I, Section 1, the first thing it says in U.S. Code is that there is no. When I say man, I mean male or female. Men. Okay? Woman is a downgrade from what God created. Woman is a title. All right? So I don't respect flattering titles. So I don't respect the notion of women as a group. And I'm certainly not going to diminish the female of the species by putting them into a group and talking about them like they do us, right? And that men do to women and women do to men as they understand the concept. No, I refuse to do that. I refuse to acknowledge that there is a flattering title, a legal title, and purely legal, that applies to half the population, that makes them somehow different or lower. We're all equal. And if we could start from that playing field, we wouldn't have all these problems. Right? But no. Because women are inferior, because they're women and not men, why do you think men then are always getting screwed in the divorce? Because men, the legal term men, are considered to be head of the corporation. Corporation means family or household. So when the poor woman who says, I'm woman and I'm powerful, when the poor woman then, see, when she needs the inferiority of being a woman, she turns to the legal system and the courts and says, hey, that bastard owes me money. He's gonna pay me for the rest of my life, and I'm taking his children away from him, and I'm gonna get in divorce, right? Which is you shouldn't be divorced. You should be annulled. Annulled is a complete end of contract. Divorce means you're still married. You're still incorporated. Why? Because these aren't legitimate marriages. It's a marriage between two persons. There's no marriage. Marriage is a natural concept. I'm married to the land or I'm married to a female, but for a couple of persons, U.S. persons, citizens to get married, that's why you need permission, because you're joining two persons, which are individuals, into one person that's a corporation. And that's how the state sees it. And when the state looks at any divorce, it automatically says the male or the man in legal terms is always going to be responsible. And so suddenly the woman, she loves the fact that she's inferior in her status, and she uses that to her advantage to take everything she can from the man. But if the woman, so called, went to court and said, you know what, I'm not going to use this inferiority complex. I'm not going to play the woman card or whatever card you're playing. I am an equal. I'm equal. I refuse to be considered inferior by this court. I am equal to this man. I will not take advantage of that inferiority, that legal, artificial inferiority, that status, right? So you ask me what quality. I don't respect the title. So I'm not going to answer that there's any quality in a woman. The only quality that I will say is good is a female that will stand behind the male and make that male powerful and strong and good-willed, just like the man would, or the male would to the female. That's the only quality I'm interested in. If you're gonna use these statuses, these fake, inequalities to take advantage of what an entire half of the population. If you want to understand what I'm saying, if you're a feminist, if you are whatever it is you are, there is one movie that will change your mind and make you understand what legal men, the flattering title, have to go through when the divorce happens or whatever with the children, and that is a movie called The Red Pill, where a feminist wakes the hell up to what's actually happening in the legal realm and the plight that men go through because of this inequality, this notion that, I know this is probably not at all what you expected, but, again, I've gone down all these rabbit holes. I understand what's happening. I understand the legal system, the artificial status, and the inequality that happens. Watch The Red Pill, and you will change your mind about whatever it is you think a man and a woman is, and that there's any equality whatsoever in law.
What is the most courageous thing you have ever done or you have ever seen in your life?
That's a tough one, man. Done or seen? I could give you the token answer, and I could point to the guy at Tiananmen Square who stood in front of the tank, or any of these classic protests or whatever. But if I were to speak from my personal experience, I would there are times in your life, and I've tried to explain this, and I don't know if I can explain it or not, but there are times in your life, I think we've all felt it, or I hope we've all felt it, where you kind of almost step outside of your body, or you step outside of your person, your persona, the thing you're supposed to be in society, the legal person, right? The thing that controls you and stops you from being charitable and stops you from being good. And every once in a while, we step outside of that because someone needs help, right? And there was this one time where I was heavy traffic, stoplight, and there was a blind guy on the side of the road, old blind guy, and he somehow got turned around and was confused, and he kept wanting to cross, and people kept honking at him, and people kept, treating him like he's just the shit, basically. Just can't be bothered. Got to get to where I'm going. I'm in the legal realm. I'm in the matrix. Can't be bothered by the law of nature of God. I can't be charitable. Can't be loving. Can't be right. No. I'm in my causality. So I put my car in park and got out, and I went and I helped him. Waited for the light, and I helped him across the street. Right, almost got us killed because people were impatient. They're mad at me for getting out of my car. But I helped the guy across the street and got him oriented to where he could hear the beep and he could cross for himself. And he thanked me like more. It wasn't just a thank you; it was an emotional expression of love and gratitude. And I felt higher than I'd ever felt before. I felt so good and so wonderful. And I turned back and I look at the people behind my parked car. My car's in the middle of the road, right? People are honking. People are flipping me off. People are like, "You asshole! Why? How dare you? Do something charitable and good, and how could you you're stopping traffic even though they're not moving hardly at all, right?" And I felt so good that I was like, screw you guys, right? It was something. Was it courageous? I don't know if it was courageous. It was the way we're all supposed to act all the time is what it was, right? It was the one time that I might say I was the role model, right? It was the one time where I unplugged for a moment from whatever I was doing in commerce because there was a problem in nature and I tried to fix it, right? And it felt so good. And the high that you get from making the moral choice, from doing the right thing, even if it's messing up the artificial construct, right? Even if it's messing up the money flow or the traffic or whatever people, think it is. It was a beautiful, beautiful feeling. But it kept me high. It kept me going. Kept me feeling good for days. Right? I've had similar experiences. And I I tell people, I know you've had a similar experience in your life, and you remember how good it felt to do whatever it is that you were doing at that time. And I want you to imagine feeling that way all the time. What if your whole life was outside of that thing, again, that the Bible says you must leave, that you cannot practice morality in an immoral situation, that you cannot be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society? What if you got together with people who wanted that high, not the temporary high you get from drugs and from maybe making a lot of money off other people's misery and suffering? Maybe you scored a big brokerage deal, but it meant that you had to suck everybody's pensions dry or whatever. Not that kind of high. Not that kind of victory in the legal system. Not the kind of evil type of high that only lasts a short time and then you're miserable again. Not the kind of happiness that money brings, because money never brings happiness. It only fulfills desires, need or wants, not needs, right? But what if you had all your needs met? What if you were separate from all of that and you could live your life in that constant state of helping and ensuring people's well-being around you? Which would you choose? That's my question, because that's the Christ path. That's the path my mom chose to the best of her ability, and that's the path that I think most people who are at least aware of what's happening out there and who gather to this type of, you know, show or whatever you want to call it, conversation. I think that's what people are looking for. But I'm telling you right now that if you want that and if you want to feel good, you're going to have to leave. As instructed, you're going to have to leave Babylon. You're going to have to stop it. You're going to have to stop valuing your good deeds in a monetary way. You're going to have to give freely of yourself. You're going to have to you're going to have to literally circumcise or separate yourself from that society that prevents you from acting and being happy. And for most people, that's the same situation as coming out of the Matrix, right? Being unplugged from that fictional realm, that thing that protects your hypocrisy, that thing that protects your bad behavior, in order to return to the truth, which is not very glamorous. It's not, it's not fashionable. It's not, there's no distractions. It's just reality. The thing you should be worshiping, God, truth. God is truth, right? I don't know how else to put it. And so it might not have been courageous, but it was something I think most people can relate to, that says we're all heroes if we want to be. We're all good, outstanding people if we want to be. The question is, do we want to be good, outstanding people as a living? Do we want that to be our lifestyle, or do we want to continue in talking about it and hoping that someday something's going to happen? Because I guarantee you, nothing's going to happen in this realm. Nothing in the Matrix is going to free you from the Matrix. Nothing in the simulation is going to give you anything real. So, out of coffee.
Well, and that is apropos. We are on the capstone question, which is, what does it mean to be a man in today's world?
Well, it kind of goes back to the previous question. Do you mean legally, or do you mean spiritually? Do you mean,
The question is a double entendre, so it can be as a man or a man.
Well, let's talk about the question, the way it's worded. In today's world, because that's an interesting way of putting it, because the world in the Bible is always referring to the world of men, or what men invent to, of course, be hypocritical or take themselves out of nature and its law. So if you're talking about today's world, knowing that Jehovah or God existence, which includes the actual earth, nature itself, the world being a secular system, it doesn't change. So being a man under God would be the same 1,000 years ago as it would be today, right? Regardless of technology and regardless of invention, you'd be making the moral choice to do correct or to do right? But if you're talking about to be a man, a person in today's secular system, keeping in mind that I think this is one thing that people don't understand. when you're talking about the New World Order, again, very, very fashionable, very, it's a meme. It's something that people say, but they don't really understand. When you say New World Order, Novus Ordo Seclorum, well, again, world's a world of man, commerce, and seclorum. That's secular. That's godless. It is without nature and its law. So when you're talking about the New World Order, you're talking about the new order of man and man's law, secular law, Roman law, in other words, which is the legal system. Okay? So unfortunately, men right now, and the feminist again is going to shit her pants, but men right now are the most vulnerable, the most harmed and attacked group, if you will, that exists right now. They're I've got friends who, because they're male in the legal system, don't even speak to other people, and especially to quote unquote women. Remember, because there's this inferiority complex happening. We don't call it that. We call it woman revolution. The revolution where all women are stronger than men. Yeah, no, it's equality, folks, right? So to be a man in today's secular system, I mean, it's fucking hell. It's like, how do you function in a place where you can't say any word that might offend any group of people, right? That you're considered to be the cause of all problems, right? That history is being rewritten, especially if you're a white man. History is being rewritten. Every childhood, hero is being recast in some color or as a female, right? I mean, everything is the whole power of being the stronger of the species is being undercut by this flattering title that we differentiate ourselves between other humans, right? So when I say horse, do you know if I'm talking about a male or a female? When I say cow, right? Am I always going to be specific? Oh, look. Am I always going to refer like to my children? Oh, look, there's a cow because it has a penis hanging down and big balls, and there's a mare because obviously no, we don't communicate like that, and yet in our today's world, we have to constantly acknowledge sex and race and all this stuff. It's ridiculous because in law, none of that applies. Again, go read Article 1, Section 1 of Title 1. Right? It explains none of that applies. We already have equality if we would just apply it. But of course, the devil's always going to offer you some status or contract or whatever to take you out of the equality and give you what appears to you to be power, when in fact you're actually saying, I'm inferior, therefore I need more rights than this group. It's not equal rights, right? So I tell you that men must enter their manhood. Not because they're men, not because they're stronger, not because... No, the Bible says the strongest man must be the most humble servant to the weak. Right? Not because you're strong, because you can beat up a woman. No. You must reassume your role, but you cannot do that in the legal realm. You cannot be a legal person, a fictional character in commerce, and also be a man in nature. You cannot have two laws. You cannot be both. This is the problem. You cannot make the moral choice that a man must make and defend your own rights, your inherent God-given rights as a man, whether you're male or female. You cannot do that in the legal realm because your rights, hell, your rights are spelled out for you. And I got to get this in because I get it in every show that I do. Because someday this is going to click. Title 42, Section 1981. It is the statement of equal rights. And it says you, as a U.S. citizen, a person, have the right to be put in pain, taxed, licensed, harmed, punished, and extorted or exacted from. Okay, you want to know what a legal right is versus a natural or inherent right, which is the right to say no. These are your rights as a citizen, to be put in pain, taxed, punished, licensed, and extorted from. Would you sign a contract with, say, any corporation or gym or anybody where the first line says, by signing this contract, becoming a member or a citizen, your rights are as listed. You have the right, we have the right to extort from you, to exact, which means to take something that's not our due. We have the right to put you in pain. We have the right to take from you, to steal from you, to punish you, to put you in prison. Would you sign that contract? Well, no one in their right mind would do so. No man in their right mind would do so. The question then becomes, who's in their right mind? I don't think any of us are. We've all been fooled. We've all been tricked into this system. We're under a law that we do not know. We're under a law that's bigger than, put it all together, it's bigger than this house. And I mean, what kind of fool do you have to be to enter into a system of law that you don't even know the law? Right? You don't know that your rights are listed, that you can be extorted from. Why do you think you're being extorted from all the time? Why do you think a police officer give you a ticket for doing nothing? Maybe you're speeding up, a victimless crime, as they say. Why do you think they can do that? Because it's your right. You're a U.S. person. I can exact. I can take what is not my due. That's why you're taxed. That's why you're all these different things that are happening to you. That's why you have the national debt. That's why you're responsible. That's why everything is happening to you, because you have a set of rights that are legal rights that defeat your God-given inherent rights, your natural rights. You agree to abandon those in order to enter into the legal system. Once again, all the maxims of law, the principles of law that are pre-contract and some that are post come from the Bible. Those are the ones that protect the man. Once you're in contract, you're in commerce. You're no longer in common law. You're no longer here. You're no longer doing it. Once you contract, you become a person, right? You're contracting in the name of a government entity that was created at your birth that you agree to use in commerce. You are now acting as a person, which is defined as an individual, not an aggregate corporation, right? An individual person. And you're doing everything through that person. That means everything you think you own is owned by the person. Guess what? The person is property of government. So what does it be to be a man in today's world? It means you're completely and 100% suppressed and you're acting in person. That's what it means. Your moral choice has been spiritually taken away from you because you've been incorporated into a giant corporate machine called government. Right? There's no legitimate government. legitimate government was gone. The Civil War ended any legitimacy. In fact, I would say the Constitution ended any legitimacy. It created the nation state. We're not in a situation where there's legitimate government. There's only corporations. Right? There's no men ruling over men. There's no men of God. There's no God in government. There's therefore no natural law. To be a man in today's world is to be a slave. Why? Because all men have been tricked into acting in person, and all law applies to the person. The man can make a spiritual, moral choice. The person cannot. So if you want to be a man, guess what? You're going to have to leave that system that gives you insurance and gives you money and gives you all the comforts of being a legal slave, a debt slave. And you're going to have to go over here, you know, back to nature, back to its law, and you're going to have to do without a lot of the crap that keeps you invested and addicted to the system over here, the Matrix, right? The same reason that the Cypher character wanted to go back into the Matrix, because reality just didn't have all the, you know, everything didn't taste like chicken or whatever. Right? So, literally, to be a man in today's world is generally to be a slave through personhood.
That is an amazing answer. One, not very different take on the question before. I don't think anyone's dissected it like that before, and I really appreciate that. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I told you this wasn't going to be typical, because you know, semantics. Believe it or not, semantics and the meanings of words are just about everything when it comes to the legal realm. It's the trickery that keeps us in there. So yeah, there's no way to answer questions like these without examining the two realms, right? The natural and the fiction, and we tend to always go towards the fictional because that's how we're taught since from birth. We're taught to be good little public citizens, you know. So, wait, I felt like this was going to be more like I didn't want. My greatest fear for today was like it was going to be some crappy interview that I do for some job I'm trying to seek. You know, give like fake answers.
No, there are no wrong answers. So you passed.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's been fun. Time is the most important thing you can give, and wisdom, and sharing that with others. So I hope other people find value in the wisdom that you've shared today, and can grow.
Why is one man rich and another man poor? Why we ain't satisfied? Why we gotta have more? Why your suicide rates on the rest so high? Why I tell you the truth but you say don't lie? Why is being a good father at an all-time low? Why is it acceptable? Yo, why I don't know. Why she blame him and he blame her? It's useless. Ask yourself this question. Why you making excuses? Why do parents gotta bury their kids? Why we text and drive, not caring how scary it is? Why it's so hard to forgive and leave the past behind? And if you did, then that's divine. Why don't you help your brother when you see him fall? Why do we act like God don't see it all? Why do we call them black, them white, them Asians, and use labels? Now that's racism.
I don't wanna hold it.
Why?
I don't wanna hold it. Oh, why? I don't wanna hold it.
Why?
I don't wanna hold it. Oh, why? I don't wanna hold it.
Why?
I don't wanna hold it. Oh, why? I don't wanna hold it.
Why?
I don't wanna hold it. Oh,
Why is there innocent people locked up for life, while some people can't say nothing nice? Why do we always gotta question what all of it means? And why won't you follow your dreams? Tell me why. The night when you took my dad, why'd you let me see my grandpa cry? And tell me why. And why do you choose to hide, even though you was born to fly? And tell me why. And why don't we turn from all the hate? And why don't we learn from all mistakes? Why do I keep on wrecking these fat beats? And teachers don't make more than professional athletes? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why? And why?
I don't wanna hold it.
Why?
I don't wanna hold it. Oh, why? I don't wanna hold it.
Why?
I don't wanna hold it. Oh, why? I don't wanna hold it. I don't wanna hold it. Oh, why? I don't wanna hold it. I don't wanna hold it. Oh, why?
This should be considered entertainment and not therapy. We hope you benefit from our resources available at 13questionspodcast.com. Thank you for listening.